Hi, everybody. I know that's still scary for me too. Just still warming up to it, but it definitely exudes a sense of importance. I think, Adam, the Deep End Fantasy Football Podcast is back. It's our second episode for the year. I'm Mike Schopp, WGR in Buffalo, with Adam Krautwurst. Draft Sharks helps us out, and we're grateful to them. We were talking about, because Adam does a lot of the booking for us, and Adam's like, who can we get? And I said, you know what we haven't done yet? And this goes back to last year with the Draft Sharks Invitational, as well as I haven't really talked to you before. I've met Adam twice socially, and we've sort of gotten to know each other that way. But really, like when you said, I want to have a podcast for high stakes players, like my first thought was, I think he thinks I'm one of them. And I really haven't been before, but I feel like maybe it's time for me, and this podcast is going to help me. And the guy I want to talk to about it is you. So I've got some hard questions.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get you in this year. We're taking you. You're in the deep end now, Mike. You got sink or swim.
It says all over the screen. It's all over the deep end.
That's right. It's sink or swim. You're in the deep end. We like to call it the deep end because a lot of the guys we're going to interview are high stakes guys, swimming in kind of the deep end of the fantasy football world. But yeah, no, I think you're gonna learn a lot from it. The reason why I want to do it is I want to learn a lot from these guys. But yeah, tonight we can certainly talk about some of the events I like to play in and all that good stuff.
Well, if you want, we can start there. Just thinking about, so it's not exactly the beginning of the year. We're at the end of March, but as Todd pointed out on last week's show, a lot of the big money FFPC stuff is not available yet. It really gets going. Football Guys is in May, I believe. And then main event will be August. So, especially if you're somebody like I think most of us who play and would watch a show like this, where you just can't wait for it. How do you figure out where and how you want to spend your money for the year? Or is that not how you would do it? Would you not? It seems to me like going back to being in school and living in my parents' house, it would be, this is how you sort of budget your money and you make long-term plans and you make sure you don't spend above the line.
Yeah.
Is that how it works for you?
Yeah. So before, back when I've been doing fantasy since 96, right? So before it was just playing in, local friends leagues and stuff like that. And, and the bankroll didn't really matter. It was just like, I got a couple bucks. Let me play with my friends here and there. But then when you start to get into these high stakes, basically like when you're in the main event, right? That's where you're really going to start saying, okay, how many leagues can I afford to do? The main event with the FFPC is $1,900 for your first team. Every team after that is $1,500. So yeah, that can get very expensive. Now the prize is $500,000, but you're competing against the best of the best too. It's not like, hey, let's do a home league and charge everyone $2,000 when no one really knows what they're doing, and you have a good chance of winning. It's not really how this works. So yeah, managing the bankroll is big. And that's kind of what I do now. So I've got a couple of investors as well. Guys that just want to have some skin in the game, but don't necessarily want to manage teams or whatever. So I have a couple of those guys that kind of bankroll me and help me kind of monetize that. And then we kind of sit down together and we can go over some of that tonight about what leagues we're going to be doing. But we sit down together, figure out, hey, what's the best leagues to get some good ROI and so return on investment. 2 years ago, 2019, yeah. I came in fifth in the main event with only 3 teams. So I thought that was a pretty good return on investment there. Fifth place paid out $15,000. You'd think that, oh my gosh, fifth out of, thousands of people at a $1,900 entry fee, but it's a pretty, the payouts at the top, it's $500,000 to win the whole thing. So we'll go over some events I'm in that can kind of level, kind of evens out the payout structure, but yeah, so you definitely, when you get to this level, when you're playing in high stakes, you want to make sure you've got the bankroll for it. Cause it's just like poker or anything else, gambling. It's only use what you can afford. So when you get a year like COVID, when it comes and kicks your butt, you have enough to come back to the next year. Well,
one thing you said reminds me of sports betting, where you hear people talk about making sure you get the best price. So yeah. I would think this means that you need to be working different platforms. And, FFPC, we talk a lot about them, NFFC. maybe Underdog. I mean, how many Yahoo? How many are we talking about?
Yeah, no, we're talking about a lot here. So the different sites here, I might as well pull it up now. The different sites that I like to use are, so starting with the FFPC, right? So we got the main event here. This is their flagship event. This is what made me fall in love with high stakes fantasy football. It's $1,900 for a main event team, $1,800 if you're going to draft online, and the grand prize is for $500,000. I think last year they had 3,000 or 4,000 entries. And so I get into this. I fly out to Vegas, meet with everybody. It's an absolute blast. Especially when those free drink tickets start flying around there. You know what I mean? You kind of gotta
That's its own strategy. That is its own.
Right.
You have to have the discipline for that too, I would say.
Or you got to have a co-owner that is disciplined. but yeah, no. So that's fun. So I certainly do these. I'll probably do. I was in 7 last year. I'll probably do around the same amount this year. So the main event will be a place I'll be attacking online, and in Vegas. The other thing I like to do too is the football guys players championship. So that's $350 a team, which isn't really high stakes, but when you do high volume in that kind of arena, again, the grand prize is $500,000. So
The same.
the same, but there's also 10,000 or 11,000 teams. Yeah.
Right.
So there's way more teams. I think you've done a little bit of this, haven't you, Mike?
Yes. What tends to be, I had 3 of these last year, I think. What tends to be your ratio from the main event to football guys? Is it about the same amount of dollars ultimately? No, that'd be a lot of football guys teams if you're doing 3 to 7 main event teams.
Yep. So
you're not going to do 4 times as many football guys teams.
Well, this year I'm doing 21. I'm doing 21 for football guys this year.
Okay.
So that comes out to what, about seven grand probably.
Yeah.
So,
about 3 main event teams.
Yeah. 3 main event teams. Yep. So again, the leagues aren't high stakes, but when you do 21 of them, now it's high stakes all of a sudden. And I love
which do you think is the better bet, Adam? Which is the better bet? The 3 main event teams or the 21 of these? The main
event teams. A couple of reasons why. The main event pays out league prize, whereas the football guys it pays out regular season league prize. Football guys does not. The only prize that the football guys pays out was in the league playoffs, and you could have I had 2 years ago. I had a 10 or 11-0 team, 10-1, 11-0 that cleaned up in the regular season and didn't win me a dime. I didn't win. I lost in the first round of the league championship, and then in the main event play or the big playoff structure they do, the 3-week sprint there, that just kind of died out. So you have a team go 10-1, 11-0, you don't win a single dime off of it. So that's hard. At least in the main event, they are paying out for regular season. So I do like that. So the main event, if I wanted to not diversify, and spend my money a little more wisely, I would do more main events. The thing is, I love to draft all year long, right? So the great thing about football guys is May 2nd. I think May 1st. I think I missed it. I'm so mad. I usually like to do the first football guys of the year, but May 2nd, I'm in a draft already for football guys. I got the 3rd pick. Mike, we can talk about that later.
You already know, so it's already full.
It's already full. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what I'm saying. So the great thing about football guys is I love to draft and I love to diversify the portfolio. So I want to start drafting at the beginning of May all the way through the end of August. So in order to get 21 drafts in and kind of diversify throughout the course of the year, football guys is the way to do it. The main event really doesn't start running till late August. Last year, they started at the beginning of July with some slow email drafts. I don't know if they're doing that this year. But I won't start my main event until late August. So football guys just really kind of feeds the addiction and kind of prepares you for the main event.
Do you feel that you start late August because you want to just process all the information from the preseason? I mean, everybody, no matter when you start, you're all going to have the same information. So you'd have that. Really, that seems like a matter of taste. The addiction aside, it seems like more a matter of taste. Because I think there is a pretty interesting sort of strategy itself in going in early before the draft and before even free agency to try to try to find advantages that early on in the off season.
Yeah, I'm certainly doing best balls right now. I mean, we've been doing them since December, but the best balls kind of give me a kind of a feel for the landscape, kind of get the ADP at the time. There's a joke on Twitter out there about how the Revelations draft, I think it is really the draft that sets the ADP for the FFPC. But these early best balls kind of get you in the zone of kind of who's going where. And then the football guys, again, is this whole nother competition from the main event that gives you ADP as well. But even that'll shift dramatically when it comes to the main event. But the football guys, is the addiction going through. And then I don't like to do the main event till August, like you said, not even for information's sake, but for injury's sake. Like I don't want to put $1,900 in and have a guy get hurt in the second preseason game. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure everyone's in the same playing field for that as well. Because in a tournament, yes, we all have the same information, but if I draft Saquon Barkley, he gets hurt week 3 of the preseason, and then the main event's still drafting. Now Saquon Barkley's off everyone else's board, and I'm stuck with him. So, so that's kind of one of the other reasons why I like waiting until late August here. And then some of the other ones I'm going to be doing this year for the first time, which I'm super excited about, Mike, is the $3,000 varsity. So I'm going to be doing that this year. That's live in Vegas, $3,000 entry fee. I don't know if you guys can see it there. It's a $20,000 grand prize. So it's 12 teams. First place is $20,000. Second place is $8,200. Third place is $3,750. The reason why I like that is, so a main event team's $1,900. The varsity league here is $3,000. So it's not even, it's less than twice as much. But if I win first place out of 12 teams, I get $20,000. Now I came in 5th place in the main event 2 years ago and only made 15. So to me, having to compete, it's a little bit more, but only having to compete with 12 guys and have a chance at winning $20,000. I like those odds. So, and it pays out for 3 spots. So I'm definitely going to dip into the varsity on in Vegas. I'm going to do that live. I'm also going to do the 1250 auction in Vegas, which pays out $1,250 to the 1 and 2 seeds in the playoffs, and then $7,000 to first prize. It pays out 3 as well. Again, that's a nice payout structure for me there. And then I'm going to do the 1250 best ball, the 750 best ball, and the 750 auction. So on top of the main events I'll be doing. So I'm kind of going to dive into a little bit more of the high stakes world where there's less tournament play and more kind of focused on just your 12-team league.
A home league only with top players and for a lot more money than most home leagues. So that comes down to that. You talked earlier about having investors. So what can you tell us about that? Like if I wanted to play on this sort of level financially, I probably would need to find people to back me. I don't know if I could find people that would want to back me and then leave me alone with these teams. I mean, that it seems like the kind of thing where you really have to show your street cred, if you will, on that. And then, or is it sometimes a matter of, well, those investors can make certain decisions, or do you tend to want to cut them out of those decisions? And is that how most high stakes players would do it?
Yeah, I think that's how most high stakes players would do it. I'm lucky enough that my 2 investors are guys that I've been playing with for years. Guys in home leagues that know my experience, have seen the success, and just they want skin in the game. And it's also too is why spend $1,900 on one main event team when you can spend $1,900 and get a piece of a couple main event teams. So that's kind of going back to last year. I forget what week it was. 16. I can't remember. We had Zeke Elliott was on the goal line against the Giants, maybe, and he had 3 shots from the goal line to get in. And if he doesn't get in, we win $4,000 for our main event. And if he does get in, then we don't get the $4,000. And to be able to experience that with investors, like through a text message, is just insanity. It's just, it's so much fun to have that experience with people than opposed to by yourself. So, I could probably afford to do it by myself. But I just love having kind of teammates that are with me. But yeah, they kind of leave the drafting and the managing to me. That's kind of what they're paying for essentially. So, because they just kind of want to sit back and watch and relax. And some of them have come out to Vegas with me sometimes just to hang out, but other than that, they pretty much stay out of it.
Interesting. Well, that would definitely vary around high stakes players depending on what the personal relationships are and what the financial advantages or whatever the situation is. So there'd be a pretty wide range there, but it's all very exciting.
Yes.
So yeah, like a lot of that is a long ways off. You've got a sort of an idea how much you want to spend. You've got specific leagues picked out to where you want to spend them. It's very different than my portfolio because what I do is I'll give you an example. So right now I'm in a league with a lot of local guys, Buffalo and Rochester, and there's this very intricate, smartly designed offer sheet system. So certain guys are under contract for a period of years based on their salary, and then other guys still are what would be RFAs because they really didn't have those contracts. And so we set it up so that you could try to poach each other's players. And this is we're going into the second year of it. The first off season where there would be any of this tomorrow morning is when that starts. And Adam, like I am sitting there staring at the spreadsheet all the time. Like what do I want to do? All these different situations. This league is $50. And if my dad were to call in or type in the chat, he'd be like, "What did I teach you? I mean, how many hours are you putting into it for $50?" So I like the friendships and the different formats and things like that. We're going to do a new dynasty league this year. You get the draft. The startup draft is the best. There's only one of those in any league's history. But I put a lot of time and effort into leagues where there's really just not much of an. I mean, $300 maybe was first place.
Yeah.
So
no, I get it. Listen, that mentality sounds like you're ready for the high stakes world. You know what I mean?
I might be, but I also like trades.
Yes.
And a lot of those leagues wouldn't allow for trades, which is good because I don't want people I don't know for that amount of entry fee making trades with each other, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, and before we move on real quick, Mike, I wanted to just I wanted to talk about the KFFSC, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. So it sounds inclusive, right? Kentucky State Championship, but it's run by Farrell Elliott, fan of the show. And I love, so Farrell's the Balkman's co-host there for the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour there with the FFPC, and he's been running this forever. I was in a big payback I was in 2 big paybacks last year. It's $1,000 entry. Won one of those, or was in the money for one of those. But I'm going to be in Kentucky this year for this too. And we'll talk about this off show, but I want to drag you out to Kentucky with me this year too. But
when it looks like April.
No, so these are okay. So let me go over here. I'll get to those ones, but April, these are the ones going right now. These are pre NFL draft, post draft, $200 entries, kind of early birds, so to speak. Yep. Not best ball, but there's a $5,000 grand prize. So I think it's like a tournament style, but you're drafting now or you're drafting pre and post NFL draft, and there's a $5,000 grand prize. They also have prizes for the main event and all that type of stuff. So this is new new last year to them. They're in Kentucky, so they got the the mint julep division and all these different stuff, the Millionaires Row, all these different stuff with the Kentucky Derby. But so those are fun. But yeah, so these big paybacks, these little $1,000 leagues, these are nice, right? So these are single entry into just the one league. You can get into a couple leagues, but it's not tournament style, right? So these are end of August. So these are 2 weeks before Vegas. So a lot of people use these as prep for Vegas because a lot of the high stakes guys play in both. So I've heard him talk about this. I've heard of these. I've never done one, but I've heard of them. And I love Kentucky, so I'd be up for that, of course. Awesome. It's an absolute blast. I haven't been there live yet. I'm going live this year. But yeah, again, it's $1,000 entry. First place gets 5,000. Most points in the regular season gets 2,000. So again, I'm kind of gearing more of the bankroll this year towards singular leagues where if I do well in my league, I'm gonna end up paying for everything, right? So I'm doing a couple. I'm already registered, as you can see, for 2 big paybacks. I haven't registered for the auctions yet, but I'm gonna do probably both of these auction leagues. $300 entry fees, pays out $2,000 to first place, and then they have what's called their main event, which is only $300. And let me see what the grand prize is. $15,000 grand prize, a maximum of 600 teams. So you're competing with 600 teams. You can have a bunch of entries in this, and I shot at 15K. So Farrell's great. The online was great. And the cool thing about this, Mike, I don't know if have you ever done third round reversal before?
Yes, quite a bit.
Yeah. So this is third round reversal.
Do you like it?
I like it because it's different. Last year, I think it depends on honestly year to year. So you've got, some years where the top of the draft is so heavy with those stud running backs that it probably would help those teams at the end of the first round who don't have any chance at these guys to get a higher third round pick. Whereas other years, I'm not sure it quite matters. So in fact, last year I was in 2 big paybacks. And the cool thing about the big paybacks is you can, so you get $1,000 fab budget, right? And you bid part of that fab budget to get your draft spot. So in one league, I blew my load and wanted the first pick, Christian McCaffrey, team stunk. Another league, I kind of waited back, had a later pick, had more fab budget, and that's the league I ended up winning money in. So I really, at the end of the day, I think it obviously depends on how you draft, but I don't mind a little third round reversal every now and then. Well, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think it makes the more strategy, the better. So if you are doing it and instead of randomly assessing the draft order, instead what you're doing is you're assessing choices, like you're ranking, you won the spin, so you decide where you're going first. And I think third round reversal can make that more interesting. I've done a couple where people prefer to be at the end and, you figure out what kind of team you want and then the value, you have tiers, right? So I think it just helps to make the slots at the end of the draft more appealing. So I'm for most strategy, and that's, as I said before, as someone who spends $50 a year to play in a league where I'm obsessing over whether I should put a bid in on Darnell Mooney. Like that's what I'm talking about. So I need to step it up a little bit, I think.
Hey, Caroline.
My mother-in-law is here, I think.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah.
It's bad when you're spending more on like website fees as far as strategy wise than you are in the actual leagues that you're playing in. That's so funny. But yeah, it's going to be good. We're going to get you into the high stakes world this year. I'm going to make sure you put that to good use, put all that effort to good use. Instead of toiling over $50.
I do like it, but I could also serve me well to do these other things too. I'm excited about it. I'm learning a lot.
Cool.
So as this all plays out, you've got X amount of dollars to use to spend in this. And so how do you decide when a lot of a certain player in your portfolio is enough or too much? I mean, you certainly can remember or know stories of both where, like for me, it was James Robinson last year where I got to these August drafts like Draft Sharks Invitational. I felt like I was already overweight on James Robinson. Then the year played out and we never talked to anybody who ever had him at all. So I should have kept going, obviously, but now I know what happened. He could have also just not made the team like most guys who are undrafted rookie running backs. Yeah. So when do you decide who your favorites are going to be and how? And then the rest of that is figuring out how much of them on your teams is too much, if there is such a thing.
Yeah. So there is such a thing, right? And I think we're going to talk to some guys this year. I think we'll have Todd from PA on. He's a big best ball guy. I think he does, 150 to 300 best ball drafts a year. So he's
in one that I'm in now.
Okay, perfect. Yep, exactly. So he does a lot of stuff. He's all over every site. Todd's great. Todd was super helpful in helping us build that Draft Sharks Invitational last year. So big shout out to @Todd from BA. Definitely follow his show, the Run to Daylight podcast. He's excellent. And then we're going to talk to guys like that where they say, hey, you don't want, and I don't want to misquote these guys, but you don't want more than maybe 12 to 15% of the same players in the first 2 rounds, right? You want to diversify that portfolio when
In
you're
the
playing.
first 2 rounds. That's
In the
the
first
key
2
there,
rounds,
because
yeah.
as it gets later, you'll go heavier on certain people.
Sure, because it's not going to kill you if that guy goes down. Exactly.
Right.
So yeah. So, and again, I'm pretty sure that that's what he said on the recent podcast with Matt Schauf over at Draft Sharks. But yeah, so it's there is such a thing as that type stuff. And like I said, we're going to talk to those guys. And as I get into the cool thing about high stakes is you don't really have to worry too much about that, because like if I've got 7 main event teams, right? And I've got, I'm not getting 7 first number 1 picks to get, so I don't have to worry about being overweight on Christian McCaffrey or whoever.
Right.
So that's the great thing about high stakes. Now, the football guys is a little bit different, and I kind of want to pick Todd's brain and pick some of those guys. I know Crack Rock does a lot of leagues and those guys. So I want to pick their brain on what they think the right percentages are. But as far as that goes, yeah, it's as far as flag planting, I certainly am not. I'm not doing it now. Wait until after the draft, and then you can start to process. Okay, coaching changes, right? Roles. What roles are players going to have right now? Because we like our guys now in best ball drafts, but we don't necessarily are going to plant our flags on them for 6 months, right? So because rookie receivers are going to get drafted, that are going to change that type of stuff. Backfields are going to draft running backs that are going to change carries and roles and all that stuff. So I'm not flag planting now. I probably start to flag plant around, I want to say late July, early August is when I'm going to start to say, okay, I've got the coaching changes, I've got the depth charts, I've got my thoughts on certain players, and then training camp starts to start, and you see kind of the roles of the different guys, and that's when you say, okay, time to plant my flag on this guy, and start to really, whenever drafts come, this is the guy I'm hammering in the 5th round, or this is the guy I'm hammering in the 7th round. Last year for me, I was right on some guys, I was wrong on some guys. I was big on Jonathan Taylor at the end of the 2nd, early 3rd, planted my flag on him. I was big on Tyler Higbee. Planted my flag on him. He was not so good. So, but yeah, that's usually about the general time that I'm going to start doing stuff like that.
Taylor ended up 3rd in the league in rushing.
Yes. I remember us doing a podcast, Mike, back in, whenever it was, maybe week 5 or 6 or 7. And I remember one of the topics that we put up there was, how did I go wrong on Jonathan Taylor? How did we go wrong? Like, what did I miss with Jonathan Taylor? And then all of a sudden it's like he heard me and it just took off. And he was sensational. And now he's like a top 6 pick in these drafts.
Yeah. Week 17, which we wouldn't have used, didn't help us a lot there because he had a huge game, but what it seems so obvious, but one thing, just if I may, in that analysis, the week-to-week fantasy football analysis we all consume, it would be nice if the first factor analyzed is, well, who did they play? And you'd see, like, Taylor had a game against the Raiders where he went off, and sometimes it's just going to be the schedule. And judgments are made about players. They don't have to be running backs. They're made about players that, this was a bust or whatever, but it really will change once the schedule changes. You can't, of course, always know when and how that's going to manifest. But really, like, a lot of times, Lamar Jackson last year, struggled, certainly in comparison with the year before. Then he got really sick and he missed a Pittsburgh game. And he came back and it was, wow, well, the Ravens are peaking and Jackson's back. They played Dallas and the Giants and the Jaguars and the Bengals in a row. And I'm a big Jackson fan, but the schedule was, I think, the biggest variable in that. And instead of focusing on really, is it form or is it opponent and circumstances? So that's just something that I'd like to hear stressed, and sort of, it may seem too obvious, but a lot of times it's not even mentioned or considered.
And you know what I'm wondering, Mike, is, a lot of times running backs are such an easy transition to the NFL, right? They come in, if they're good, they're good. If they get the opportunity, they're going to succeed. And I'm wondering if just a lot of them just not having a training camp last year really affected Taylor, because Mac got hurt week 1, I think it was.
That's early. Right. That's right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, Jonathan Taylor is going to smash. And it took 5-6 weeks. And there was clips on him, all over the internet, Twitter, whatever. He's just missing holes, wrong reads, this, that, and then all of a sudden, like you said, the schedule gets a little better. But man, he just took off, and I'm wondering if having even a full offseason this year is going to help him succeed even more.
Well, they played Baltimore early, and that would be a tough team. And that was one of those games when we were probably wondering if he was any good. So running backs, Adam, I don't know how much time you want to spend on this. It's after all the strategy, eventually it comes time to implement it. And the zero RB mindset and approach, which is, of course, well documented and is always being discussed. What a year, I think, so far for testing that. I mean, you can tell me, you'd know better than I would, I think, just how this sort of feels in comparison with other years. Last year, and maybe this is always the case, where you feel like you are really out on a limb if you wait 2-3 rounds on running back. I'm in a draft now where I drafted running back 1, 2, 3. And I just, every time I look at that roster, I'm like, I love it. And I almost can't even imagine starting with no running backs there. But of course, I mean, I've learned the importance of making sure you're going against the grain in a draft. So it'll be something we'll probably talk about a lot, and just what to do there. You did have, as we talked about last week, a couple of running backs, one being Josh Jacobs, where it seems like already they're less valuable than we thought a month ago. Maybe Miles Sanders ends up in that kind of a situation too. So, it's maybe a typical year, I guess, of walking in when it comes to this, but I'm already finding it a little bit stressful to wait even until round 3 for my first running back.
Yes. So a lot to unpack there. And I want to say a couple of things. One, I suggested wait later on to plant your flags, especially for these football guys in high stakes leagues. But a guy like situations like the Josh Jacobs situation, that's a horrible situation for him. You can pretty much, if you didn't like Josh Jacobs before, you're certainly not going to love him now, and you're certainly going to be fading him. Another thing I want to say is, speaking of fading, Nelson Souza on Twitter, the franchise 12, I think he is. I'll look it up. He writes an article every year, his fade list. He's a high stakes player. Nelson Souza has at the _ franchise 12. He has a fade list that he does every year that he just crushes. What's funny is you get all these websites out there. I'm going to go off on a tangent now. You get all these websites out there that have rankings and listings and stats and projections. And what if you just had a list of 10 guys to completely stay away from and 10 guys to absolutely attack? I mean, I feel like that in and of itself would be enough, right?
I think the list of guys to fade is very useful. And I think I had one in my head last year without having written it down. I mean, there were always guys that I never wanted. And if I tried to figure out right now who they were, I'm sure there were hits and misses.
Sure.
But
it
comes down to price, right? Like Stephon Diggs would have been somebody I never had last year. And it wasn't because I disliked him. I totally accepted, Matt Harmon's work, and just this guy is elite. But I just never saw the Bills, like most of us maybe, being the offense they were for a combination of reasons. And so what you got, if you ended up on Diggs went in drafts at the time where there was always someone else. It was early enough where there was an Allen Robinson or a Galladay. There was always someone else. And so he wasn't a fade. Maybe he was. I don't know. Would this count? Like, he was just never on my team.
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't think it's necessarily a fade. It just happened. It's guys that you're intentionally not drafting. But yeah, so Nelson Souza does a great fade list. Check him out on Twitter. That's awesome. Matt Harmon, like you mentioned, Matt Harmon does the reception perception. That's so good. Follow him on Twitter too, and go get his stuff, because I go to him a lot, and maybe we can get him on the show. That would be great to talk about receivers maybe during the summer. But he does some great work. Reception perception's awesome. He's the one. He put me on to Tyler Lockett and all that type stuff. But yeah, Diggs I never saw coming. I just didn't think that they were going to throw the ball to him. I mean, listen, we're Bills fans, right? Get the tables, okay? And I just, like you said, Josh Allen, I saw him taking that next step, but I just didn't think they were going to throw every single play. So now, Diggs went from a 7th round pick to now I'm looking at the ADP here, and Diggs is going
15
to 2.5. Yeah, 17 overall. Yeah, exactly. So it's wild. But yeah, back to the zero RB. I love what you said. I love if zero RB is your thing, or if you're thinking about trying it out, I love the thought of going 0 RB this year because these are the type of years to do it. So you got the first 7 picks, and this is Fantasy Mojo ADP. Definitely subscribe to them. They are a tool. I'm on there every single day. Fantasy Mojo ADP, mostly FFPC stuff. And you've got, out of the first 12 picks, you have 1 receiver being taken, right? So this is the year. If you've got pick 10 or pick 8, you can go Devontae Adams and come back with maybe Tyreek Hill in the second or Steph Diggs in the second or whoever your number. You can get your top 2 receivers with your first 2 picks. Whereas in years past, I remember a couple of years ago, the first 3 picks were receivers. That was like, that was the Odell Beckham. Was it Mike Evans? I'm trying to think of who else was in there. I can't remember, but it was the Odell Beckham second year where he was in there, and it was just the first 3 picks were receivers and
Antonio Brown.
Yeah. Antonio Brown. That's right. So that was the year. So it's hard to go 0 RB when with the 4th pick in the draft, you got to take the 4th best receiver. But this might be the year, man. We're talking 3 of the top 12 picks right now are tight ends: Kelsey, Kittle, Waller. And your first receiver is taken to the 8th pick, and the next one at the 13th pick. So, if you're picking 8th or 9th, do you want to pick the 8th or 9th best running back? Man, you can take Adams. I mean, think of like last year, Mike. I had a couple of Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce teams. Those teams won me a lot of money, right?
Well, you have to get the running back right, don't you? I mean, isn't it more incumbent upon you to sort of guess right, if I can put it that way, at those running back positions? That could have been Gibson in the middle rounds. Like that was somebody that I had a lot of last year. But if you picked someone else instead, whoever you want to think of, even if it's like an Akers or somebody that came on late, probably they're better examples of guys who didn't get the job done at all. Singletary, right? Like those picks would have doomed you. So you have to get the running backs right. But that's always the way. It just feels that, and lots of people have said this, but when you're in those middle rounds and these wide receivers, there's just less room for error, or more room for error. Like you've just got more guys that come in around this, Deontay Johnson and so many of these guys that seem pretty comparable. But running back, I don't know. I mean, of course, studies have been done. I'm not sure how different it is, but just definitely it feels different. It feels like there's more risk in building a team that way. That isn't to say I don't want to do it. I definitely want to do it. I'm forcing myself to do it because I believe in it. I mean, I believe in it. Like the most important thing seems to be doing what they're not. And then those FFPC drafts with the tight ends, you end up having to figure out whether you want to risk it with not one of those 3 guys, or then even Andrews or Hawkinson. Jared Cook is somebody who's back, maybe relevant again. Jonnu Smith in New England, Kyle Pitts, try to make it work with your tight ends in that range.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so. One of the best spots, Mike, if you want to do 0 RB or modified 0 RB, is RotoViz. So Sean Siegel's kind of the godfather of the 0 RB. I think 2013 or 14, somewhere in there, he had a monster year in the high stakes world doing 0 RB. He had a great year that year. And I think so. The great thing about RotoViz is Sean comes out with an article every year. It's like the 0 RB targets for running backs in the later rounds. And that kind of helps you navigate the minefield of, God, what running backs do I take? And why? And do I take handcuffs? Do I take what do I do? And Sean Siegel does a great job with providing you the type of running backs that you want to target, the type of guys that you're looking for. And year in and year out, he kind of nails those, Naheem Hines type backs. So those are the guys you're really looking for. You're looking for the elite handcuffs, guys who are an injury away from being an RB1, the Tony Pollards, the Madison. Alexander Madison's in theory, right?
In theory, he's never done it, but yes.
Right, that's right. And then you want those pass catchers, guys, because you still got to start 2 running backs in these FFPC. You want guys that are just going to at least get you those catches, maybe 4, 5, 6 catches a game to kind of hold over until one of those. Because the whole thing behind the 0 RB, right, is running back gets hurt a lot. It's very volatile position. Look at last year; there's a ton of injuries to the running back position. McCaffrey, Barkley, all those top guys. The idea is, hey, let's avoid those injuries. Let's take the Travis Kelce's, the Devontae Adams, the receivers who statistically get injured less, and let's build around those guys. So to me, I'm most comfortable in a modified 0 RB, where maybe I take a stud. Like if I'm even the heaviest 0 RB guys are going to tell you, hey, in those top 3-4 picks, you are going to want to take that running back, that workhorse, because they're just so valuable. But after that, pound receivers, because they get hurt less and they bust less, and kind of those are the guys that you're going to want to build around. Pete Overzet in the Draft Sharks Invitational, he's a big 0 RB guy. He took Dalvin Cook, right? One of the more injured running backs in the NFL, and he cleaned up for him. He had his receivers stacked, and he ended up winning the what I think is the toughest competition in all fantasy football,
the Draft Sharks Invitational.
That's right.
The
Absolutely.
big check, the big novelty check.
The best of the best are in that. Come on.
The Thanksgiving float. He wins with that as well.
Right. The Thanksgiving float.
Yeah, that'll be special. All right. Well, I will rewatch this and then write a lot of it down, and then hopefully not ask the same questions every week.
For sure.
So good luck. You can find us lots of places. Deep End FF1, Draft Sharks, Adam Krautwurst, Mike Schopp, WGR in Buffalo. By the way, I don't often plug that, but I wrote a column for that website today, WGR550.com, on cards. And you and I don't think we've ever talked about cards, but you know how hot that is.
No, we have. Last time we got together, we talked. I didn't realize you were so big into cards. We were talking about Top Shot and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I never got into that, or at least haven't yet, but I brought a card out for you today just to show you.
Is this a Honus Wagner, Mike? Is that what you got over here?
No, my kids are playing with that. They're out on their bikes. I've got you. Will this work? This is a USFL Kelly.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Not going to work on this.
I
screen.
see it.
I don't know, but it's a PSA 9.
USFL,
PSA. Yeah, Topps made two USFL sets, 84 and 85. Or I think maybe there's an 83 there's maybe a third one, a red one. No, I don't know. But this is 84, and it's a pretty good card. I mean, it's gone up 3 times since 10 years ago, which was when I was mostly into it. But PSA, the big grading company, announced tonight that they're not going to accept new submissions until July because they are so backlogged and it's getting worse. So they're going to take the next 2 or 3 months and try to catch up. And so you're trying to get a card grade. I have a Wilt Chamberlain rookie that I was thinking of sending on the Super Express level, like a $300 level, and now feels like maybe I can't do that. I'm not sure that's right. I haven't read it through, but it sounds like they're going to put a pause on things. Anyway, so we have our interest in cards too.
I love it.
So there's a little bit of an aside there, but yeah. So we'll come back in the next week or so with. I'll be away next week, but I can take all my stuff. I'm not going to be as poorly lit anywhere else in the world as I am here at home. My shirt comes apart like I'm the brother in Back to the Future, and
That's right.
The dad hit someone else with the car, so
That's
I'm sort of disappearing here.
Listen, you look great tonight. We're getting better and better. I love it, and we're going to get you into high stakes, and then you'll be wearing a shirt and tie on the show. Okay.
Oh yes, I'll start doing my research tonight.
Love it.
All right, thanks everybody. Thanks Adam. I'm Mike Schopp with Adam Krautwurst. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.